My parents turned my celebration into my sister's engagement party. I cut them off. Years later, I became CEO, and they came crawling back. They used my money to throw a party, then announced my sister's engagement instead of my promotion. What did I say next? It shattered the room. My name is Nancy Allen. I was born and raised in a tranquil suburb of Oregon. From the outside, my family appeared to be the ideal of middle-class American life. A house with a lavender-filled front yard, a spotless white picket fence, and pleasant family dinners under soft lighting. However, the inside was far from as nice as it appeared. My parents, Mark and Linda Allen, were firm believers in modern parenting techniques, and I was their firstborn. My father, a software engineer with a passion for math, had always wanted to have a bright, special child. My mother told her friends that she had read more than 40 books on child psychology before I was born. I was born into this world with tremendous expectations, monitored, measured, and experimented on like a test subject. But when I turned 3 and still couldn't count to 20, or write my name correctly, Mom's dismay was obvious. "Mark, I don't think she's capable of learning as quickly as we hoped," she said, her voice tinged with disappointment and trepidation. "We need to intervene early so we don't miss the golden stage." My father simply nodded slightly, but I recall how he looked at me that day, as if I were a math problem with the wrong answer, unworthy of further investigation. My younger sister Claire was born when I was 4 years old, and everything changed at home. Mom appeared to be another person. Every room in the house was packed with brain-boosting toys, emotion flashcards, and advanced learning tools often found in high educational institutions. I had clear memories of that afternoon. I was quietly building Lego blocks in the corner of the living room when Mom passed by, looked at me and said, "Claire is only 7 months old and already responding to 3-step sequences. You never mind, keep playing." Claire received a musical high chair, Swedish cloth books, and a private monitor teacher before she turned 2. And me? I had pre-printed workbooks, a stubby pencil, and daily reminders that I needed to work harder to achieve. When I was 8, I finished second in the school-wide art competition. I brought my painting home, filled with excitement. Mom looked at it and said, "Huh. Well, Claire read an entire short story in English today." Dad didn't say anything because he was busy putting together a logic problem board for Claire downstairs. I've learned not to anticipate anything. No compliments, no incentives, and no proud expressions. I gradually became a shadow in my own family, ever present but never really seen. The breaking point came in the fall of the year I turned 12. I'd always had my own room, the upstairs one with the window facing the small woodland back our house, where morning light filtered through the drapes in gentle rays. I adored that room. It was the one place where I felt entirely myself. Claire barged in one evening, just as I was finishing up my schooling and about to hang a new drawing on the wall. "Mom says I'm moving up here. This room's bigger, and I need space for my new study corner." I looked at her and thought it was a joke. "No," I responded firmly. "This is my room." Claire shrugged and walked away. Everything had changed in less than 24 hours when I returned home from school. My possessions had been relocated to the smaller room near the laundry area. Claire's name now adorned the old room, which was outfitted with modern learning tools and a clean white study desk. I walked into the new room, which was small, cramped, and cold. The bed reclined against the wall. The desk was too small to hold my books and a lamp. I stood there with my hands clenched, sobbing silently. "Mom," I called. "Why would you do this? That was my room. I've had it since I was little." She didn't even turn around. "You're older now. You should learn to give way. Claire needs it more. Don't make a scene, Nancy." I did not respond. I stepped back in, shut the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. The light from the hallway filtered through the gap under the door, pale and odd. For the first time, I felt it clearly. Despite being the firstborn, I was regarded as an afterthought in that household. Claire remained the focal point of the Allen household by the time I was in my senior year of high school. She was now a top student at a prominent private high school, driven around in a brand new SUV and receiving private tutoring twice a week. And me? I still attended public school, walked to class every morning, and handled everything on my own, from academics to extracurricular activities. I've never complained. I'd become accustomed to being in the background. But I wasn't expecting the moment when every pretense of impartiality was shattered right at the dinner table. My grandparents, Arthur and Helen, paid us a visit that night. They were the only ones in the family who made me feel seen and heard. We were eating Mom's lasagna as Claire discussed her summer program plans at Stanford. "That's wonderful," Grandma Helen replied, turning to me. "And what about you, Nancy? Have you thought about college yet?" I looked up for the first time, hoping to contribute something of my own. "I applied to the University of Oregon and UC Davis. I just got accepted into Oregon's business program, partial scholarship. If I get more financial aid, then—" I hadn't even finished when Mom put down her fork and knife. The sound resonated strongly. "Nancy," she said, her voice straining, "your father and I have discussed it, and we are unable to provide additional tuition assistance this year." I blinked. Dad jumped in, as if rehearsed. "We need to prioritize Claire. She's been invited to an Ivy League prep program. It's a rare opportunity." My heart sank. "So all the college savings you said were for both of us are going to Claire?" Mom sighed, as if to state the obvious. "Claire has real potential. You, Nancy, might want to consider starting at community college and transferring. Or taking time to work. Isn't a bad option either." Not a bad option. It took me a second to realize they'd completely cut me off. The room went silent. No one spoke, save for the soft clink of Grandma Helen's spoon on her plate. "Linda," she said, her voice low but firm, "both girls are my granddaughters, and I can't sit here and watch one be cast aside." Mom pursed her lips. "Mom, this isn't—" "Yes, it is," Grandpa Arthur added. "It absolutely is our business." That night, as I was removing dishes from the kitchen, Grandma Helen approached and gently placed her hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to carry this burden anymore," I heard her say. "We'll pay for your college tuition. All of it, no loans needed." My eyes were crimson when I turned. "But that's too much money." "It's not too much when it's an investment in someone who tries." She smiled warmly. "You don't need favoritism to shine, Nancy. You've already done it on your own." That fall I moved into the dorms at the University of Oregon. The day I left home, Mom gave me a half-hearted hug at the door and said, "Be frugal. And don't expect anything from us." Claire didn't look up from her phone. I stepped out of that house carrying my bag across the front yard path, feeling as if I had opened a new door, one free of patronizing stares and stinging comparisons. College was a different world. I wasn't the typical youngster. No longer the specter of a self-proclaimed genius. I was Nancy Allen, a business student with a bright mind and a strong personality. Professors praised my strategic thinking. Friends approached me for help with assignments. Every weekend night I called my grandparents to keep them up to date on my progress. My parents didn't call. They didn't check in either. Surprisingly, I was not unhappy. I didn't need it any longer. I had stopped looking for validation in a place where it was never readily available. What I had now was genuine value, one that came from within. I began my final year of college with a level of certainty that I had never imagined. Late-night library study sessions, part-time shifts at a small downtown cafe where I studied how customers think, and hours spent studying every investment model I could find online, helped me stand apart. Dr. Elgin, one of my finance instructors, suggested I apply for a competitive summer internship at Bradley and Lane Capital, a well-known investment firm in Seattle. I recall the first interview. A glass conference room, a beautiful wood table, and 3 managers seated across from me, each holding my resume. Zaylin, one of them, said, "What do you believe is the most important factor in developing an investment strategy?" I gave an answer. Understanding not just the data, but the psychology behind it. They exchanged glances and nods. I received the offer. From that summer forward, everything changed. After graduating with honors and having my study published in a financial magazine, I was offered a full-time position as a junior investment analyst at Bradley and Lane. I worked relentlessly, learning everything from risk studies and shareholder presentations to how to read between the lines on unpredictable market charts. 3 years later, when doing a standard assessment of a high-net-worth client portfolio, I discovered something concerning. A set of high-tech stocks in which our firm had made significant investments demonstrated signals of fake growth. The internal indications appeared to be especially robust when compared to the wider market. Most experts thought it had breakout potential. But I didn't. I spent 2 sleepless hours reading through every number, tracking back appendix reports, and eventually discovering the truth. Those businesses were inflating income through internal transactions, basically purchasing their own things to generate sales. If we did not withdraw in time, we would lose at least $32 million in customer assets. I couldn't be silent. That Monday morning, I entered the executive boardroom carrying a 42-page report and a risk simulation model. Nobody interrupted. When I finished, the CFO sat dumbfounded, then turned to the CEO and said, "She just saved the company." Within 3 days, the entire portfolio was reconstructed based on my proposal. And 6 months later, not only had we avoided a major loss, but the company recorded an 11.4% increase, the greatest in 7 years. I was promoted to lead investment strategist, but my journey didn't end there. I began using my after-hours time to create a risk score system based on market behavior, incorporating aspects such as consumer psychology, social media trends, and global political changes. It was the type of stuff the industry typically referred to as unquantifiable. I named it PRISM. Initially, PRISM was a personal project. However, after properly forecasting price fluctuations in 3 major stock groupings ahead of critical events, top management took notice. A year later, the method was fully integrated into the firm's fundamental strategy, allowing Bradley and Lane to outperform 2 of its main competitors in the sector. I still recall the day I was summoned to the senior boardroom. Richard Langley, the CEO, smiled at me once everyone had taken their seats. "Nancy," he responded, "we're creating an entirely new position, Chief Strategic Investment Officer, and no one is more deserving than you." I could barely breathe. Just 4 years ago, I was advised I should work for a time and figure things out later. That role was more than just a title. It was proof of everything I had conquered, from being the ignored child in my own home, to being the one at the helm of a multi-million-dollar company's boardroom. That evening, I did not celebrate with champagne or a party. I visited my grandparents' house, a simple red brick home filled with warmth. Grandma Helen was baking, and Grandpa Arthur was preparing tea. I placed the appointment letter on the table. They grinned at each other. "Little Nancy," Grandpa added, now leading the way. I looked at him, then at Grandma, the first person who told me I didn't have to be extraordinary to be worthwhile. For the first time, I did not require anyone's approval. I had already proven it to myself by silent fortitude, dogged determination, and unshakable faith. After accepting the role as Chief Strategic Investment Officer at Bradley and Lane, I knew I needed to document the event. Not with grandeur, but with a small, loving gathering of individuals who had supported me. My grandparents, a few close friends, and a couple of trustworthy co-workers. When I relayed the idea to my mother, she promptly suggested, "You should let us host it. Do it at home. Make it more intimate. The family can also reunite." I paused, but she added, "You only need to send the money for catering and decorations. I'll handle the guest list and everything else." I was skeptical, but I believed after all these years, this would be our chance to start anew. I transferred $3,500 to her account, and did not inquire further. A week later, when I arrived at the old house in Salem, where I'd grown up steadily sliding behind Claire's shadow, I never expected to walk into a brilliantly organized production. The mansion was more richly furnished than I had imagined. White orchids decorated the dining tables, silky golden ribbons wound up the staircase, and the aroma of great meals pervaded the environment. I noticed my grandparents at the small pub, speaking with a few family members. Claire climbed the steps in a gorgeous crimson satin gown, her face flawlessly made up. I didn't recognize the tall, polished man who was walking beside her. People gathered around, and just as I raised my glass to speak, my mother stood up, smiling. "Dear family," she said to you, "we're here today not just to reconnect, but to celebrate something truly special. Claire and her boyfriend Andrew are officially engaged." Cheers and applause erupted. I stood frozen. I turned to my mother. Her glance swept over me as if I were only another paid guest at a banquet. As I stepped forward to speak, my father grasped my wrist like a period at the end of a sentence. "Don't ruin this," he urged, his voice as sharp as steel. "If you make a scene now, don't expect anything else from this family. No contact, no inheritance, Nothing. I released his hand from mine, and took a deep breath. Part of me wanted to get away and let them drown in their own play. But the other side, which had spent too long in the shadows, refused to remain silent. I returned to the center of the room, raised my champagne glass and said, "Excuse me, everyone. May I have just a moment?" All eyes were on me, and Claire paused mid-step. My mother's brow furrowed. This gathering today, I continued softly but plainly, was planned to celebrate a major milestone in my life. I was recently named Chief Strategic Investment Officer at Bradley & Lane, a major financial firm in Seattle. I paused and searched the room. I'm the one who sent the money for this event. My mother agreed to organize it and never once mentioned it would be turned into an engagement party. Murmurs echoed across the room. My grandparents remained frozen, astounded. I'm not against Claire's engagement, I told her. What I can't stay silent about is the fact that my own family tried to erase me from my own moment. Just like they did all throughout my childhood. Andrew looked at Claire, perplexed. You told me this was just a family gathering. Claire's face turned red. Andrew, I just wanted to wait for the right time. By using your sister's money to stage your big reveal? He asked, his voice dropping. I came here expecting to feel welcomed, not to watch someone be pushed out of their own moment. He put down his glass and walked away. Claire chased him in vain. The room plunged into uncomfortable silence. My father stood there, outraged. You should know your place, Nancy. This is still... No, I interrupted. This is a place built on favoritism. It's not a home anymore. I turned to my grandparents. They hadn't moved. Grandma Helen's eyes sparkled, and Grandpa Arthur took my hand as I approached them. I don't need the rest of this family to know who I am. I walked out the same door I'd previously left silently. But this time, I held my head high. Andrew left the party without saying anything, leaving behind Claire's terrified visage and a perplexed family. She chased him to the porch, but the car door shut before she could speak. The Mercedes' tail lights faded behind the trees, leaving the room silent after it had previously been full with laughter. Claire returned, her tears quickly replaced by wrath. You've always been jealous of me. You can't stand seeing me happy, so you destroy everything. I stood still. I did not reply. For the first time, I wasn't hurt. I was just sick of hearing the same boring blame repeated like a broken record. Claire, Grandma Helen said, her voice calm but firm. You made your own choices. Don't blame the consequences on your sister. My mother raced forward, her face blanched with rage and embarrassment. Nancy, who do you think you are to humiliate your sister in front of our family? I don't need to think, I said quietly. I just told the truth. And I've stayed quiet long enough. My father grabbed my mother's hand and tried to hold her back, but his eyes were blazing. If you walk out of here today, he said in a cold tone, you're no longer part of this family. Don't expect an inheritance. Don't expect to ever call us again. As far as we're concerned, you never existed. I was about to speak when Grandpa Arthur, who had been silent the entire evening, stepped forward, his voice ringing out like a bronze bell in the quiet room. David, if you're going to cut Nancy out of this family, then it's time we clarify a few things. Grandma Helen walked beside him, holding his hand. My mother looked at them, as if she knew what was coming. We updated our will 3 months ago, she replied gently. The entire estate, the house, the savings, the investment shares, it's all going to Nancy. My mother let out a surprising gasp. What? We've seen enough, Grandpa Arthur said. Enough to know who lives by their values, and who lives off of being coddled. Claire is my biological daughter, my mother nearly yelled. Why her? Because she's the only one in this family who has never demanded anything, complained, or stepped on others to elevate herself, Grandma Helen explained, her voice trembling slightly, but her gaze steady. We don't reward favoritism or deceit. Claire burst into tears as her pride disintegrated. She ran up the stairs, her red dress bursting like a bleeding stroke on a collapsing canvas. My mother stood in the middle of the room, lips trembling. My father turned away silently. My pulse pounded as I grasped my purse and gazed at my grandparents. I never asked for this. I don't need the inheritance. We know, Grandpa Arthur said, smiling. And that's exactly why you deserve it more than anyone. I looked around the house, which had once been a wound, but is now a stage for the truth to be shown. The family rose from their seats one by one, averting my gaze as if they had just woken up from a bad dream. Nobody stopped me when I turned to leave. I went outside, the spring night breeze stroking my cheeks and carrying the familiar scent of apple blossoms from the backyard. I heard the door close behind me, but this time it did not crash shut. It was the culmination of years of endurance. On the walk back to my grandparents' house, Grandma Helen reached out and lovingly grasped my hand. "You don't have to fight to prove yourself anymore, Nancy," she once said to me. "Now you get to just be." I looked at her with stinging eyes. I'd never felt so calm. Not because of money. This is not due to recognition. However, for the first time I chose myself over gaining acceptance from those who never truly wanted to see me. 3 years have passed since that night, when I walked out of my parents' house for the last time, carrying the truth, agony, and power I had no idea I possessed. I never looked back. I've never felt the impulse to. Throughout those 3 years, I gave my everything to my work at Bradley and Lane. Every early morning before dawn, every tranquil night on the 19th floor, I was there. Fine-tuning strategy, updating the Prism algorithm, listening to the market, and leading my team beyond previously insurmountable obstacles. When Richard Langley, the existing CEO, announced his retirement, no one expected him to choose me as his replacement. But for me, it was not luck. It was the conclusion of every effort, sleepless night, and difficult decision I had ever faced. I was 30 years old when I was officially appointed CEO of Bradley and Lane Capital, making me the company's youngest female CEO in its 60-plus year history. The announcement happened in the main hall. Camera lights are flashing. Every seat was filled with shareholders. I came on stage not to wow, but to represent a new generation, one that does not have to be born into grandeur to make its mark. After the lecture, I took out my phone and called my grandparents. "I did it," I exclaimed, my voice full of enthusiasm. Grandpa Arthur laughed on the other end, and Grandma Helen spoke words that I will never forget. "You've always been worthy, Nancy. From day one." Meanwhile, 40 miles away in Salem, where I grew up, not much had changed. Claire was now 27. She no longer wore her engagement ring or had steady employment. Andrew left that night, and her life became a series of failed attempts. She dropped a fashion course because she felt under too much pressure. I attempted being a content creator but quit, because no one gets my style. I eventually moved back in with our parents, into the room she had taken from me. I haven't interacted with my parents since that night. My grandparents occasionally mention that they have inquired about me through shared relationships, but I don't care any longer. I've realized that not every relationship is meant to last, especially when it is founded on denial and selfishness. Every Sunday afternoon I visit my grandparents for dinner. We toast bread and pore through old photo albums that I assumed were lost forever. Grandma Helen still tells me modest anecdotes about my upbringing. Grandpa Arthur swears he doesn't remember them, so I have to repeat every detail. I once asked them whether they had any regrets about leaving everything to me. "We didn't leave because of what it was worth," Grandma stated. "We left it to the one who understood the value of choice. The one who chose integrity over convenience, silence when it mattered, and voice when it counted." I smiled because I recognized that the most valuable inheritance they had given me was faith, not assets. One spring afternoon, as I was leaving the office after a global strategy meeting, I observed someone waiting in the main lobby. I squinted and saw it was Claire. She appeared smaller, with an anxious expression, but she maintained her signature look, a luxury coat and polished heels. "I'm not here to apologize," Claire said hastily, like a barrier. I just want to know how you're doing so well without anyone lifting you up." I looked at her, neither angry nor pitying. "Because I once had nothing, Claire. And that's when I learned to stand on my own. That's something you've never had to do." Claire looked at me for a long time. She said nothing and began to walk away. I'm not convinced she'll ever change. But I know I will never be the sister who always gave in, endured, and remained silent to keep the peace. I strolled back to my workplace where my team was ready to cooperate and build something fresh. And I realized that no matter where the path leads, as long as you don't abandon yourself, the journey will always be worthwhile. My story is more than just about how I overcame parental bias. It displays the power of perseverance and inner worth. I was once ignored, pushed aside at my own celebration. But I chose to ascend out of honesty and respect, rather than anger. Today, I no longer seek affirmation from those who previously rejected me, because I have found a community of people who believe in me. Most importantly, I learned to believe in myself. What are your thoughts on Nancy's decision? Was she overly harsh, or was it exactly what she deserved given what she had gone through? Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.